Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and today I'm coming to you with another range report. And today's range report is brought to you by my Patreon sponsors and my good friend Jack, who lent this awesome firearm to the channel for review and the ammunition to go with it. So what gun am I reporting on today? Well, today we have the Remington R1 1911, and this is a special 2012 edition, which is the gun of the year for the National Wild Turkey Federation. Now, that is pretty cool, but what can I say about a 1911, a full-size government 1911 that hasn't already been said? I am a little bit perplexed by this 2012 gun of the year because this is the same thing as saying, well, the 1932 Ford Coupe is the car of the year. Well, it's definitely a cool car, and for its time was extremely revolutionary, and for many hot rodders is still relevant today. However, the design is decades old, and when it comes to this gun, it's actually over a century old. So saying it's the gun of the year, I don't know. Maybe they're just trying to promote Remington because they supported this particular organization. Does that make this gun very valuable? I don't know. Maybe if you're a member of the National Wild Turkey Federation, it could be. Now, Jack let me shoot this because he does not have the corresponding box. He purchased this used, and unfortunately, he does not have that box, so he goes, go ahead and shoot it like any other gun. I'm not going to keep it as a collector. So, it is here on the table today, and I got some range time on it. And you guys know, I'm a huge Colt fan. I love 1911s. And because I like 1911s, well, all the 1911s from other companies, I think, have some type of interest and value to me. Now, I have never shot a Remington R1 in the past, and this was a great experience for me. The thing I noticed about handling this gun here on the table before even getting it to the range is, like many modern 1911s, it's kind of a mix of the original design, the A1, and a few modern features. Not a lot of people know this, but a 1911 is very different than a 1911 A1. And many of the 1911s that you see on the marketplace today at your gun shops are actually more A1 versions, which came out in the late 1920s versus the originals. So I'm going to go over a couple of features of this that I think are original to the original 1911 design. Then there's a few that are the A1 upgrades and a few things that are modernizations. Well, let's talk about the controls first. The controls of this gun are very much like the original. You actually have some serrations on the slide stop, and it has the very, very small safety. Many of the A1 versions had an elongated safety, and a lot of people didn't like that original 1911 style. They thought it was a little bit too small. It also has a flat mainspring housing, and that is also traditional to the original John Browning design. A few of the upgrades that make this a little bit more like an A1 version, it does have the elongated beaver tail or tang here and the longer hammer. You also have a short trigger. Now, this is something about these A1s that I really like that are often omitted in many of the modern designs. The short trigger is very recessed far back into the frame. Many modern Colts use either a mid-length or kind of an original longer trigger. I really like these. They seem to fit my fingers and my hands a little bit better, and I always felt like I get a little bit better control. So this is one of those features from the A1 that they just kind of continued, which I do like. Now, the grips on this are very modern. These are G10 grips. I think they're very attractive. They do have a little cutout here for your thumb. And I should say this is definitely a right-handed gun. The 1911 has always been a right-handed gun. Now, we do have a few controls that can be ambi, and a lot of times left-handed shooters have complained about shooting this gun. In fact, one of my friends who shoots this gun in this range report, who's one of my next door neighbors, is a lefty. He shoots it and he tells me his thoughts, but we'll get to that in a moment. The sights that they decided to use on this are a 3-dot sight. I'll see if I can get this into focus here. Maybe I can, maybe I won't. But a 3-dot sight that is dovetailed both in the front and the rear, so you can change those out to anything you like. And of course, that is a huge upgrade from the originals, which had very, very small sights on them. Something else that is a little bit modern is the ejection port. This is lowered and it's scalloped for better ejection. And this is also a 1911 A1 frame because you do have these scallops around the trigger as well. The original 1911s didn't have that, and that was one of those upgrades to the frames that you would see after the 1920s. So as I said, this is kind of a mixture of an original 1911 design, a 1911 A1, and a few other modern upgrades. Everything else about this is pretty traditional. This does, however, use the Series 80 firing pin safety that if you own a Colt, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When I disassembled this, I was kind of expecting it to be more of a Series 70 where it doesn't have that. And they do eliminate the little part on the frame that looks like a little bridge. And many times on 1911s, after a lot of use, those crack. They got rid of that as well, just like the modern Colts. So I'm not sure if they were intentionally trying to copy the Colt design or the modern Colt design in this, but they did. But everything else about this seems to be extremely high quality. The fit, the finish is really nice. When I dry fire this, the trigger is exceptional. It might have a little bit of creep, but you guys know 1911 triggers can be tuned. So for a factory gun, this thing is pretty good. And if you sent this off to a competent gunsmith, I think it could be really nice. So that's kind of my initial thoughts on this, but let's get this thing to the range. Let's see how I do. I'm going to set the target at 7 yards like I always do. Put a magazine through this, see how it shoots, see if I have any function issues, and see how the accuracy is. So let's see what happens. All right, so this thing shoots a little bit low for me, but is very accurate. The recoil is just like any other government size 1911, which by the way, is my favorite size 1911. The full size, the way John Browning designed it, is simply the way to go. It just handles those 45 ACP pills like a champ. They're awesome. The gun feels great. I have to say, when you rack the slide on this, you can tell the machining is really nice. That action is really smooth, and you feel that in your hand when you shoot it. So right now, it has a great trigger, a great feel. It shoots like a 1911, but I wasn't expecting anything different. So now we're going to go to the accuracy portion of this range report. I'm going to double the distance here on this target, try to take my time and go for the head on this IDPA target, and see how I do. I'm expecting this thing to shoot really well.
Failure to feed.
So I ended up shooting a little bit faster than I was expecting to, but the gun feels so good, it just kind of wants to be shot fast. It feels really easy to get this thing back on target, and it was very accurate. If you also notice, I did kind of have a failure to feed. Now this happens a couple of times in this range report, that when a magazine is fully loaded, you rack the slide and it just kind of gets caught up a little bit. It could be a feed ramp issue where maybe it's just a little bit out of spec. Maybe something in the feed ramp could be polished. Many times when you have 1911s or higher end 1911s, those feed ramps will be polished for that reason. So maybe that's just what this gun needs. It only happens once or twice in this range report and this range session, so I wouldn't be too concerned. It's something that just might kind of wear in, and it only happens when a magazine is fully loaded. But the gun is really accurate, and I am really impressed with it, especially with the trigger. Well, unfortunately, my wife Becky is not with me on this range trip, but my next door neighbor and his friend are. So of course, I wanted them to take this gun for a spin, see how it shoots for them, and see what they think. They know a lot about guns and go to the range a lot, so I value their opinion. So let's see what they think.
Switch hands.
All right, so as you saw, both of them shot this really accurate. Both said they thought it shot like a great 1911. And the second shooter was my next door neighbor, Phil. He's a lefty, and as you saw, he started with the right hand, then shifted to the left hand. It shot even better for him, and he had no problems and said he could get over the controls being on the left-hand side. So, no issues. They said it shot like a great 1911. It is so far going through this range report with flying colors, so if you're a big 1911 fan, I think you're really going to like the R1 from Remington. All right, so now let's get to what I refer to as the defensive portion of the range report. This is where I load 2 magazines. I try to shoot the gun really fast and do a quick magazine change. After all, if you're going to carry a 1911, it is a single stack 45. You might want to carry a couple of extra magazines with you. So if an average shooter like me can clear that magazine, get a fresh magazine inserted, and the gun back in action, I'm sure most people can too. So let's see how fast I can do this and see how the gun performs.
Failure feed. Second time that's happened.
All right, so I actually thought that was pretty fast. The reload was a little bit slower than I was wanting, but these 1911s, especially mil-spec 1911s, they don't have any type of flared mag well or jet funnel to help you reinsert those mags. So that slowed me down just a little bit. So I don't know if I would necessarily use this gun as a competition gun, but for a defensive gun, I think it would be just fine. And if you are going to practice fast reloads, you just got to get used to that. See, even me inserting the magazine right here without even looking at it, it gives me a little bit of trouble. I guess we get spoiled by many of the polymer Wonder 9s of today with those nice big old flared magazine wells and those double stack magazines. Makes reinsertion of the magazines really fast and really easy. But you don't get this on this 100-year-old design. So, what are my final thoughts on the R1 1911 by Remington? Well, this is one fantastic 1911. And as I said, I like Colts. And many times you will hear me say, if it's not a Colt, it's a copy. And so, while this gun might not be the perfect 1911 for me, as someone that knows 1911s and appreciates 1911s, this is a fantastic 1911. As I mentioned before, the fit, finish, and function of this gun are excellent. The slide to frame lockup is pretty good. You just have a little bit of a shake there, but these guns can't be made with such tight tolerances because if you get any particulate in there, they're not going to run reliably. You got to have a little bit of leeway, and that's what this gun has, but not overly so. The gun is finished absolutely beautiful. I don't see really any machine marks on this at all. And if you like traditional 1911s, I think it has everything that you want. But if you like modern handguns, it has everything you want, like those dovetailed sights and modern G10 grips. So this really is kind of a modern take on the classic 1911, but it's more classic than modern. So this is not the most innovative gun. Sometimes when I review guns here on the channel, it's because they're the latest and greatest thing, or they have some type of special or different locking mechanism. Well, this is a 1911, and you guys know the 1911 and why it is so popular and why so many people like it. And I think Remington made a fantastic copy of the 1911. So I really have no complaints about this whatsoever. It is just truly a classic that has stood the test of time, and Remington's take on it, I think, is absolutely wonderful. I've really enjoyed shooting this, and it has a great feel in my hand. I really like that shorter trigger, and for a factory 1911, I think it's pretty darn good quality. So on my star system, how would I rate the 1911 R1 by Remington? Well, I'm going to give this 4.5 stars out of 5. Yes, it met all of my expectations, but it did not exceed them, only because it's a 1911. And yes, the 1911 is possibly the most influential pistol that has ever been designed, but it doesn't take that design to the next level. It's still a 100-year-old design, and I can appreciate them giving it the 2012 Gun of the Year, but as I mentioned before, it's like saying a 1932 Ford is the car of the year. It's a great car, and this is a great gun, but it's not innovative and it's not new. But if you like 1911s and shooting 45, you definitely can't go wrong. So 4 out of 5 stars, Remington R1, National Wild Turkey Federation Gun of the Year 2012 edition. Just what a fantastic 1911 and a real pleasure to shoot. So there you go. What do you guys think? Do you guys own a Remington R1 1911? And I believe they make this in all the different barrel lengths. So I believe there is a commander version and an officer version, but I would have to check. But right now, with Remington kind of being out of business and recently sold, I'm not sure if these are still in production, but I know there are plenty out there to be had, probably in gun stores and online auction sites. So there you go. What do you guys think? Do you own one? Do you like them? Do you like 1911s? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.